You are listening to the Objects of Affection collection. Study 47, The Simulacrum of the Copy, Aritzia's Dupe Trademark and the Legalization of Hyperreality in Global Fashion IP. Contemporary critical theory identifies a cultural state, defined by Jean Baudrillard, where the capacity to distinguish between reality and its representation has collapsed entirely. The hyperreal condition. This is not merely the production of fakes or copies, but rather the generation by models of a real without origin or reality, a realm where signs substitute for the genuine experience they once represented. The fashion industry provides a perfect, accelerated example of this phenomenon, as aesthetics have long become subservient to constructed symbolic codes, engineered by capital. Brands like Louis Vuitton exemplify this by reproducing proprietary symbols as simulacra, signs emptied of intrinsic use value, yet saturated with hierarchical meaning. Aritzia's aggressive move to trademark the phrase Aritzia dupe represents an empirical legal attempt to impose structure upon this dissolving distinction. The brand seeks to regulate the very language of imitation, striving to define and control the real that has emerged from digital discourse. This is not a defense of the product. It is the institutionalization of the sign system itself. The traditional legal mandate to protect the authentic object is deemed insufficient when the culture itself favors the simulation. By attempting to appropriate the term that signifies the copy, Aritzia elevates the simulated item, the dupe, to a position of market authenticity, effectively making the simulation the only legible truth about the product in the hyperreal marketplace. Sign value and the crisis of prestige. To understand why this legal pivot is necessary, one must recognize the philosophical shift in how luxury is valued. The value of commodities is increasingly determined by sign value, the inherent expression and mark of style, prestige, luxury, and social power. The rise of the dupe directly attacks the integrity of this sign value system. When a fast fashion garment perfectly replicates the aesthetic, the sign value, of a premium item, it succeeds precisely by extracting that symbolic value while stripping away the accompanying excessive exchange value, the high price point. The dupe operates as a hyper-efficient mechanism for isolating and reproducing the constructed prestige. This intense, targeted extraction destabilizes the financial hierarchy that sustains the original brand's exclusivity, exposing the crisis chronicled in The Luster Restored. Since luxury is already a constructed system of signs, the only remaining strategy for the original is to cease fighting the copy's existence and instead fight for control of the sign that acknowledges the copy's success. The imitation generates value for the original, compelling the brand to secure a proprietary claim over the imitation's signifier. The genealogy of the dupe, institutionalizing non-confusion, the pivot from enduring knockoffs to actively responding to dupes, is fundamentally a semiotic event that confirms entry into hyperreality. Historically, owning a replica carried a stigma. However, the digital age has fostered a profound cultural acceptance of the dupe, which is now often celebrated as a badge of honor and a smart choice. For Gen Z and millennials who prioritize aesthetic access over brand allegiance, the cachet comes from finding the look affordably. The key distinction here is the institutionalization of non-confusion. Traditional trademark enforcement hinges upon proving a likelihood of confusion, that consumers are misled into believing the cheaper product is the original. Yet consumers openly search for and share dupes, often proudly highlighting the price difference and source. Because dupe culture thrives on this intentional non-confusion, the brand's traditional legal tools are rendered obsolete. Abandoning the legal defense of the material object in favor of claiming proprietary rights over the cultural discourse surrounding the imitation is a strategic acknowledgement that the copy functions as proprietary marketing capital. At Sofeet's, Costco has an Aritzia dupe for $19. No time to be demure. Person light female, which color would you go for? Costco clothes, Aritzia, Aritzia dupe, Costco, Costco mustaves, Costco dositagain, Costco finds, Costco buys original geluid. The four orders of simulacra, and the fashion IP loophole mapping reproduction onto Baudrillard's stages. The procession of imitation. The history of design replication in fashion can be rigorously mapped onto Baudrillard's 4 stages of the simulacrum, revealing how structural legal weaknesses have facilitated the transition into the hyperreal. The sacramental order, high couture, where the designer is believed to be the clear original source. The order of maleficence, high-quality counterfeiting, where the intent is explicitly to deceive the consumer. The order of sorcery, the era of modern fast fashion knockoffs. The legal vacuum in intellectual property law, where design protection is tenuous or non-existent, means that the concept of an original garment is structurally absent. The fast fashion copy exploits this legal silence, substituting the aesthetic for the real. The piracy paradox and the commodification of the aesthetic template, the economic structure of the fashion world, is deeply paradoxical, functioning contrary to the standard IP theory that copying stifles innovation. Instead, the industry operates under a piracy paradox, where widespread imitation and replication are not merely tolerated but actively stimulate demand and innovation, benefiting the industry as a whole. As designer Ralph Lauren stated, "You copy. 45 years of copying, that's why I'm here." This phenomenon suggests that the premium brand's true economic output is not the physical garment itself, but the cultural aesthetic template it generates, as evidenced by the volume of its imitations. A product achieves must-have status precisely because it is deemed worthy of duplication. If the imitation is the source of value, the brand must find a way to legally incorporate and control the sign of that successful imitation, turning what was once a liability into a proprietary asset. The leap to stage 4, authenticating the signifier, the trademark attempt, is the active moment of institutionalizing the transition to the fourth stage, the pure simulacrum. This stage is characterized by the sign having no relationship to any reality whatsoever. In this context, Aritzia is substituting the sign of the copy for the reality of the original. The brand legally asserts that the most definitive market truth about its product, the fact that it is successfully imitated, requires legal control over the very language that signifies that imitation. This move attempts to claim ownership of the cultural effect of being duped. The brand is no longer defending a physical product. It is regulating the semiotic exchange surrounding the product's disappearance into the realm of copies. The legal enshrinement of simulation, trademarking the dupe, Aritzia's application. Securing the semiotic weapon, the legal strategy employed by Aritzia, marks a significant shift in intellectual property enforcement, moving the battleground from the factory floor to the digital lexicon. Aritzia filed trademark applications in both the US and Canada for the phrase, Aritzia dupe, following Lululemon's precedent of registering Lululemon dupe. This maneuver is designed to gain control over the commercial discourse within social media. The objective is not to stop the physical copying, which is often difficult to prove legally, but to impose a regulatory tax on the language of imitation, thereby reclaiming some proprietary control over the cultural circulation of the aesthetic template. The institutionalization of the stage 4 simulacrum and the generic trap. The legal viability of the brand plus dupe trademark is critically challenged by the risk of genericide, the term becoming so widespread it is generic. The term dupe is already highly descriptive in the consumer vernacular. For the trademark to be valid, Aritzia must successfully argue that Aritzia dupe has acquired a secondary meaning that identifies Aritzia as the source of the conversation surrounding the copy. The ultimate irony embedded in this legal pursuit is that the brand must continuously highlight how frequently its items are duped, thus confirming the descriptive and arguably generic nature of the imitation, while simultaneously claiming proprietary rights over the compound phrase. If a court ultimately approves the application, it will have compelled the legal system to affirm that the sign of the copy is a primary, source-identifying feature of the original brand. This fundamentally validates the shift toward hyperreality as the regulatory benchmark. The irony of enforcement, the implosion of legal truth, the paradoxical legal duplicity, fighting confusion while claiming the non-confused. The most revealing theoretical consequence of the brand plus dupe strategy is the implosion of legal distinctions it requires, confirming Baudrillard's observation that the postmodern condition works against previously essential distinctions. Lululemon's ongoing legal activities provide the most unmistakable empirical evidence of this necessary theoretical schizophrenia, as analyzed in The Monopoly on a Vibe. Lululemon must sustain a dual legal identity to maximize profit. It must argue that consumer confusion is sufficiently widespread to justify trademark lawsuits, while simultaneously relying on consumer awareness and non-confusion to support the protectability of the dupe trademark. The brand has conceded that it has lost control over the object and the consumer's ultimate behavior. Its only remaining control is over the discursive framework surrounding its loss. The new logic of brand equity, the cybernetic signifier, the phenomenon of the dupe, signals a deep erosion of symbolic value within established brands. Allegiance shifts away from the producer, Aritzia, toward the curator, the influencer or platform that locates and validates the dupe. The consumer gains status not from ownership of the exclusive original, but from the intellectual achievement of obtaining the perfect substitution, embodying the principle of value beyond price. The trademark attempt is therefore an aggressive attempt to control the total cybernetic signifier. By regulating the language associated with its imitation, Aritzia seeks to impose a proprietary fee on the circulation of the cultural template it originated. The registration of Aritzia Dupe is an acknowledgement that the sign of imitation has become more economically potent and culturally resonant than the original product's name alone. The brand seeks to transform the negative energy of imitation into a positive, regulatable stream of sign value. The legalization of the pure simulacrum, Aritzia's trademark application, for Aritzia Dupe, transcends mere brand protection. It is a structural acknowledgement that the economic and cultural significance of the copy now fundamentally outweighs the original's material integrity. This is the definitive endpoint of the critique outlined by Baudrillard. The hyperreal condition is not just observed, but legally ratified. The brand has surrendered the fight for the material real, accepting the market's determination that value resides in the symbolic template and the discourse surrounding its replication. By seeking to trademark the term of its own imitation, Aritzia performs the final act of substitution, forcing the legal system to validate the hyperreal state. The signifier of the copy has achieved institutional authenticity, and the simulation has become the new regulatory benchmark. This confirms that the actual enduring value lies in the narrative, intentionally resistant to replication, as championed by the curated algorithm. Authored by Christopher Banks, anthropologist of luxury and critical theorist. Office of Critical Theory and Curatorial Strategy, Objects of Affection Collection. This has been a study from the Objects of Affection Collection, a critical art research institution operating under the framework of post-luxury conceptual functional art. Read the full research at objectsofaffectioncollection.com.